Artificial intelligence. You hear that term everywhere, right? It can sound super complex, maybe even a little intimidating. But what if I told you the big ideas behind it are actually pretty straightforward? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull back the curtain and demystify AI, from what it is to the huge questions it's asking of our future. Let's jump in. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics. What on earth is AI? Then we'll peek under the hood at how it learns. After that, we'll look at all the places it's already hiding in your daily life. Then we'll get into the heavy stuff, the big ethical questions. And finally, we'll look ahead to our AI-powered future.
All right, first things first. Before we get lost in the details, let's just nail down the big core idea behind artificial intelligence.
Okay, try to forget the sci-fi movies for just a second. At its absolute heart, AI is just about getting computers to do stuff that until now has been a human-only gig. We're talking about things like learning from experience, making judgment calls, solving tricky problems. You know, all the brain work we do every single day without even thinking about it.
I love this analogy because it's just so perfect. See, old school computing was all about giving a machine a flawless set of instructions for every possible scenario. But modern AI, it's totally different. It's more like teaching a kid to ride a bike. You don't write down the physics, you just give them the bike, they try, they wobble, they fall, they adjust, and eventually it just clicks. They learn on their own.
Now, this is a really important distinction to make. Not all AI is created equal. The AI that you and I interact with every single day, that's what we call narrow AI. Think about Siri or your Netflix recommendations. They're geniuses at their one specific job. But the other two you see here, general AI that can think like a human, or super AI that's even smarter, that stuff is still purely theoretical. We are not there. Not even close.
Okay, so we know what it's trying to do. But how does that learning part actually happen? For that, we gotta pop the hood. The engine that drives almost all modern AI is something called machine learning. And the key phrase here is without being explicitly programmed. So instead of a coder trying to write a million rules for what makes an email spam, they just feed the machine a billion emails that humans have already marked as spam, and they let the machine figure out the patterns for itself. It learns by example. And that process usually happens in three main stages. First, you've got training. If you want an AI to know what a cat is, you show it millions of pictures that are labeled cat. Then comes the learning phase. This is where the model tweaks its own internal wiring over and over again, trying to get better at spotting what makes a cat, well, a cat. And finally, you have prediction. You show it a brand new photo it has never seen before, and it makes its best guess. Yep, that's a cat.
So to pull off this really complicated learning, scientists looked for inspiration from the best learning machine ever created, the human brain. And what they came up with are called neural networks. They're basically systems of interconnected digital neurons that work together in layers to recognize incredibly complex patterns, kind of like our own brains do.
And this brings us to the technology that has been absolutely everywhere lately, large language models, or LLMs. We're talking about ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it. These are massive neural networks that have been trained on like a huge chunk of the entire internet. And at their core, all they're really trying to do is predict the next most likely word in a sentence. But it turns out, when you can do that billions of times a second, you can write essays, answer questions, and generate text that feels unbelievably human.
Okay, so that's the theory. But this stuff isn't just happening in a research lab somewhere. Let's talk about where this technology is already a part of your life, often in ways you probably don't even notice. I mean, think about the last time you were on Amazon. That customers also bought section, that's an AI analyzing millions of data points to guess what you might want next. When you use a customer service chat bubble on a website, there's a really good chance you're talking to an AI. It's the invisible force behind so much of modern finance, marketing, and e-commerce.
But the impact it's having on healthcare is, well, it's just staggering. There are AI systems right now that can look at an MRI scan and spot early signs of a tumor that a human doctor might miss. It's helping scientists discover new life-saving drugs in a fraction of the time it used to take. This isn't science fiction, it's happening today.
And it's not just about science and data. AI is absolutely exploding in the creative world. You can now just type a sentence like a photo of a fox sitting in a library reading a book and get a stunningly realistic image in seconds. It's composing original music. It's helping authors brainstorm their next novel. It's becoming this wild new kind of creative tool.
And the list just keeps going. It's the brainpower behind the push for self-driving cars, and it's being used to analyze massive amounts of satellite data to help us tackle huge problems like climate change and deforestation. Its reach is just enormous.
Now, all of this sounds incredible, and honestly, a lot of it is. The potential for good is just immense. But with any technology that is this powerful and this transformative, you have to hit pause and ask the really hard questions. With all this power, what could go wrong?
And that brings us to the ethics of it all. Because AI really is a double-edged sword, and if we're going to use it responsibly, we have to understand both sides of the blade.
Let's just take education as an example. On the one hand, you have these incredible benefits. An AI tutor for every student, available 24/7, with learning plans that are perfectly tailored to them. Amazing. But the flip side? You have very real concerns about cheating and the risk that students might stop developing their own critical thinking muscles. It's a classic trade-off.
And when you zoom out, you see these kinds of trade-offs everywhere. AI systems can accidentally learn our own worst biases from the data we feed them. They raise huge questions about data privacy. They're going to change the job market. And maybe most frighteningly, they can create deepfakes and misinformation that is so realistic, it becomes almost impossible to tell what's real anymore.
So when you put it all together, the jaw-dropping potential and the very serious risks, what does the path forward actually look like?
If there is one thing you take away from this, let it be this. AI is not inherently good, and it's not inherently bad. It's a tool, a powerful amplifier. It can amplify our ability to solve problems and create amazing things. But it can just as easily amplify our flaws and our mistakes. The future it helps create? Well, that really depends on the choices we all make, starting right now.
Which leaves us with a final, massive question to chew on. When an AI messes up, and it will, who's to blame? The person who coded it? The person who used it? The company that owns it? Figuring that out isn't a tech problem. It's one of the biggest ethical challenges of our lifetime. Thanks for watching.